These guys, they never miss a trick. Never miss a trick.
I mean, it's just like a fraud within a fraud within a fraud within a fraud. I mean, it's what's the word? Like when you look at like the way the world works, everything is like it's like a snowflake of fraud. It's just like unbelievable. Like
It's
it
ridiculous.
never stops. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, like the best part is like how fast the PR hits. Like you go and look, and like Bloomberg's right there. Like LBMA told us this, and Kickle. LBMA told us this. It's like, okay, well that's the freaking story they want to tell you. How about you do some research about what the reality is? I mean, It's like, no, let's just parakeet what they say and just keep getting paid by. I mean, the whole thing's a joke. Like we all know. There's no financial journalism because there's no money in that. People don't want to pay for that, and the only people that get paid to do financial journalism are financial PR agents. Essentially, it's like the conflict of interest is real.
It's ridiculous.
No, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And if you're not careful, you're just going to be listening to PR pieces.
Well, that's all that we have anymore.
Even like supposed. I mean, like everybody has a self-interest, right? I mean, of course, like I'm going to get on here and say, Bullion's good, et cetera, leaving the stuff. I mean, I buy it. Right. I walk the talk, and all that. But,
we're going to get into that too.
Yeah, I'll be wrong, like for many years and get laughed at and be told I'm a kook, et cetera. But I got my bet and I'm waiting to wait on it because it's just too obvious and the downside risk is low and the upside is very high. So I just, I'll ride this out. Especially with the other nonsense going on. You look around and it's like, there's nowhere else I'd want to be at the moment. At some point, though, that'll change. At some point, that will change. You'll have to be clear-headed enough to move some of your stuff into other things.
Well, that's the whole point that's why we acquire money and wealth is not necessarily to say, hey, wow, look at all these coins I've got. Isn't this great? Look at these bars. No, it's to be able to take those and to transfer them and to create, to acquire the stuff that we want and need to, for our lives. I mean, I would love to take a stack of coins, be they silver or gold, and trade them for a house. Would love to take a stack of coins, bars, rounds, be it gold or silver, and trade them for all of the items that are relevant to me and my family. That's the whole point of it.
Right.
And not lose the purchasing power because some filthy satanic globalist like Pelosi, Schumer, and all the rest of the scumbags decided that they wanted to hand out 2 trillion fiat Federal Reserve notes and call it a stimulus package. It sounds a lot like socialism to me. I'm sorry, communism. It's all the same. Socialism, communism.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because got a lot of people parading around as if they're capitalists, or that they are into free market capitalism. I don't think people realize this. Never been true free market capitalism and like 100%. And I think just if you look at the flaw of human beings, there never will be. I'm sorry. There's always an inside self-interest, and they're always going to be rigging rules. You can try as you might to get to capitalism. And the closest we probably had to capitalism, I mean, I would imagine in U.S. history, I don't know. That's a tough call. Do we ever? What's the pinnacle of our capitalist society? Because it was always, it's always been dirty. There's always been rule rigging. There's always been insiders. There's always been corruption. There's always been people like Warren Buffett pretending like he's a capitalist, but he's truly a cronyist. It's like that has always been with us.
Well, but if you look at, there was that period of time in the early and mid 1800s when we were on a silver standard and gold was very prominent. Silver was money. was flying around. That's what people used to make purchases, to generate an economic engine. And if you look at that period, that is the most prosperous time in human history.
Yeah,
Period.
the transition from agrarian society with slaves to industrial society with semi-slaves. I mean, ultimately, like, let's be honest, like it's much easier to have slaves if they're willing to house themselves and follow along with orders with debt. So. But yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at technology and the speed enhancement of people's quality of life, it was obviously the Industrial Revolution. That's probably the best moment. And even then, it wasn't pure capitalism because you still had mingling. You still had people, getting things rigged for themselves, and Rockefellers and those types, just unstoppably cutthroat and just using whatever leverage they could to get, larger and bigger. So I can see, I totally get it. I understand that you have to be able, I don't know, when you look at this situation, the bailout thing, it's obviously none of us, I think, want to see corporations that have been loading up on debt, buying back their shares,
Right.
Doing all the wrong things in the last 10 years, having their executives basically cash out, golden parachute out, and basically leave unsecured shareholders, the employees of the company, just with a bag of dung, essentially. So none of us want to see those people get bailed out. And I was looking, I haven't even gone down the rabbit hole of the ongoing bailouts because it's just overwhelming, and this is going to take years to sort out. But even just a cursory look at what the Federal Reserve pitched the other day on their website was it's just so twisted and disgusting. The Exchange Stabilization Fund is setting up an SVP to buy back, corporate debt. So triple Bs, that of the companies that a lot of them were buying back their own shares, yep, and essentially ripping off their shareholders. They said they had to buy. They're going to have to buy these corporate bonds, these triple B ones, so the system doesn't implode and they get downgraded. And they're going to stick them in a special vehicle, whatever, SVP, whatever the hell it stands for, special vehicle something or other. But the money they're using is from the ESF, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is, quote unquote, the profit that was made from confiscating U.S. citizens' gold in 1933. Lord knows, really, they can just the whole point is they can just print money out of thin air and have all these proxy accounts anywhere in the world. And money's not an issue. It's just a question of how they're going to lie to us about how they're doing it. Right. So even the idea, like the Federal Reserve is actually showing us what's really going on, is a joke. Like in 2008, we were talking about the bailouts. They started with the $700 billion TARP. And then lo and behold, years later, a partial audit exposed 29 trillion total loans, around the world. So from 700 billion to 29 trillion, I wonder if 6 trillion is going to become, what's that? 90 trillion, 100 trillion. I mean, is that how far we're going to have to loan? Probably if we have
more than likely.
Yeah,
if we look at it realistically and use the model that from 2008, just like you said, right. And I didn't realize that it had grown to 29. The last figures that I've always used were 16 to 23. We knew that it was in that range somewhere, but we weren't exactly sure. But 29, that sounds more like it. I mean, and that's what is that? 100 times more? I mean, what I can't even. 700 billion to 29 trillion is just a ridiculous amount of growth.
That's a 41xer, and if this 6 trillion number being paid out, we're going to 248 trillion. So essentially, we're going to bail out the entire global debt supply. That's what the Federal Reserve is essentially doing. It's that concept that we will bail out infinitely, whatever it takes. I mean, that the same kind of crazy. We gotta instill confidence while we're lying and doing all the things behind the scenes. I mean, that's just still that same thing.
Well, before we get too far into this, we're speaking with James Anderson. I'm Rory Hall with the Daily Coin, and James Anderson is the director of content over at SD Bullion, and we love his work, respect him immensely. And last night, you were supposed to be enjoying a conversation that he and I had yesterday, but instead he produced a really great piece, a short video on what's happened, what's transpired between the COMEX and the LBMA, which is a crime in itself. And James, I want to kind of shift the conversation to that
Sure.
because that we learned, or I learned this morning. I'm not sure if you had mentioned it last night, but they've got this new contract, this 100 ounce, 400 ounce, and 1 kilo. And the 1 kilo is the curious part for me, but because that perfectly aligns with the Shanghai gold exchange, and it perfectly aligns with the 6 other gold exchanges, physical gold exchanges around the world that have miraculously popped up over the past 3 or 4 years. And excuse me, if you would kind of walk us through what this latest exchange that these guys announced after the market closed yesterday.
Yeah, I think the title is called Gold. The title of the video is Gold Gold Shortage Worsening. Raid COMEX and GLD ? So it's really just a recap of what the news was yesterday, and just looking at it in the big perspective of the gold industry, the gold market. So the big news in the last 2 days, probably your listeners know this, unless they haven't been online, is that you have 3 major Swiss gold refineries who had to declare temporary shutdowns in their operations. These 3 major Swiss refineries are on the northern edge of Italy, which is obviously undergoing a pretty tough situation at the moment. And so in order to protect their workers and probably not get sued, they had to temporarily suspend operations. So they declared the 2 of them, Pampa and Valcambi, declared 1 week, and Heraeus, another one, declared 2 weeks. That's going to go longer, I think, than 1 week and 2 weeks. So that you can expect it's going to become months. And then the amounts, the capacity, the refinery that they produce. I mean, the physical gold world, what it needs in physical gold every year is roughly around 130 to 140 million ounces. Okay, and about 100 of them come directly from new line mine supply. And these 3 Swiss refiners are 3 of probably 6 of the largest gold refiners in the world, about half, maybe a third, depending if their volume has been bad lately. Valcambi's huge. Valcambi's capacity is 1,600 tons alone. It's just amazing. The others are 500 each. So when you look at it, the industry is looking at a situation where half to a third, if you lowball their numbers, half to a third of the physical gold capacity for the year is essentially offline.
Let me
Go ahead.
Interrupt
Sure.
you, and I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
China refines their own gold, and they account for, and Kazakhstan refines the gold coming out of Russia. That's about 700, 800 tons right there out of the 4,400 tons total. So you subtract that from the global production. So you subtract, we'll use 700, we'll lowball it, 700 from the 44, that leaves 3,700. If you're talking about 2,600 tons coming through these 3 refineries, we're not talking about 50%, we're talking about 70%.
It's 80%. A lot. I mean, all you're left with then is like Melitor, which I think can do 800. You're left with like the Rand refinery, which my hunch is closed down because the South African mining industry is closed down. Now, if the peons in the South African mines are not allowed to go to work, you can bet the upper crust that are sitting in the Rand refinery aren't going to work. So I mean, that's just basic logic. And then Perth Mints, I'm not sure they're probably still running. And we could buy some Perth Mint certificates if we really feel like it. That's a joke from yesterday. We're not going to go into that. All right. So anyways, but the point is that the gold market is freaking out. People do want physical gold because I think they're really realizing that having all these intermediaries, these counterparties is an issue, and a lack of supply is an issue. So we got to run to get some if we can. So traders out there are trying to get gold, and they're trying to go through the gold spot over-the-counter mechanism. Yesterday, they were trying to get physical gold through the London over-the-counter market, and London's not complying. People are not in their office; they're working from home. They have limited ability, and it seems like nobody's willing to give it up at these prices based on the facts that I just described. The fact that almost half the refining of gold is mothballed. We don't know when it's going to come back. And so so you have a situation where traders are simply looking like, oh, I got to get physical gold, whatever, for me personally or my clients or whoever. And so they went out instead. They sold off the local London spot, and they ran over into COMEX futures and ramped that up. So you saw a situation yesterday where the COMEX futures price, the front month April contract, ramped with a divergence between the spot price in London of $70. And that has not happened ever, that size, at least nominally. I think that's a 45-year high on a nominal basis. So it was surprising, and it raised a lot of eyebrows. And essentially, it looks like people are trying to go buy COMEX the front month contracts to demand delivery. And so in the video, I go through okay, so let's look at how much gold is supposedly backing this COMEX and put it in perspective. And then as well, we're going to do the GLD too, just in case, because a lot of banks could raid that place as well. Worst comes to worst. Oh, they certainly will. They've done it in palladium for years now. You go look at palladium ETFs, it's a joke. It literally looks like the Japanese tokan with a few kilos in the back. It's a joke. I mean, it's bad. So if you're sitting there with GLD, not only are you losing to Bullion at the moment, but get ready for that thing to start really underperforming in the future as people start selling that and realizing it's not what it pretends to be. So anyways, the COMEX warehouse, it has about 9 million ounces of gold.
Wow.
All total. 9 million ounces of gold. Now that is split up between registered and eligible. The registered pile is like a couple million, tops. It's like 1.5 million registered, meaning the people that have 1 million roughly or 1.5 million in COMEX registered are willing to give it up in delivery if demanded. The eligible is not. Eligible is not. I mean, it can be at a right price, but not right now. Mm-hmm. So you really only have 1.5 million ounces of gold that can actually be delivered upon if demanded. So it's not much, and unless the price jacks up higher, you're not going to see the rest of those ounces come into the market either. So the 9 million ounces total. Then the GLD is pathetic too. It's like 30. I think it's 30 million right now in total ounces. And if it goes back up to its 2010 to 2013 peaks, which is around 40, that means you need another 10 million ounces there. And GLD peak, I mean, if the spot gold price gets back to $2,000 an ounce, GLD is going to have to run up to 40 million ounces. I mean, it basically has to gap back up there. Where are they going to get those ounces if this shutdown's going on? It's like they're going to have some real issues coming up here. And so what you're looking at now is a situation where they're going to just start changing rules, just like they always do. The COMEX and LBA is just make the crap up as they go and send out PR releases to Bloomberg and all these other websites and just start telling people whatever it is to make them calm down. And it's just they're gonna start using supposedly 400-ounce London gold bars for anyone who wants COMEX delivery, and then they'll just tell you it's sitting in a London vault somewhere. And you can't take delivery because secure logistics people aren't working because of the virus. So just wait. You can get delivery when this all clears up.
Yeah, 2025.
So we're in a situation now where the shortage is real. The shortage is worldwide. And the shortage is also obviously in the retail and wholesale market here in the United States and around the world for that matter. But this is, you're taking it now to the central bank level of shortage. You're taking it now to, high net worth. I can no longer hold GLD with these risks. I need to get real physical, and good luck. Good luck getting a real physical right now because it's not in massive supply. You have to be very savvy to be able to get anything in big numbers.
Can you get anything? I mean, I know that when we were talking yesterday, we discussed what's going on eBay, and how that's really a window into the free market, and you can really see how, the supply and demand dynamic actually works. You can see it, and it's
Yep.
there's still some. I went out last night and spent quite a bit of time looking around, just kind of looking to see what's available and who's got what. And I didn't look at I didn't try to order anything to set up a fake order or whatever. And it's to see what was available. What are you seeing, James? Because I know that you're connected with SD Bullion. You're not
Mhm.
in the warehouse or doing
No.
anything with the product itself, but you do have a very good relationship with the inventory manager, so you know
Sure.
what's going on. Give us an insight into what you see on eBay and what you guys have going on at SD Bullion.
Okay, so we've been working at SD Bullion the last month, roughly, maybe a little bit over a month, where Saturdays and Sundays people are working, getting paid time and a half to come in and work, even on Sundays. Now, the founders of the company are stout Christians, and they don't like to work on Sundays.
Right.
But you get in a situation sometimes in life where you make promises, you better deliver on them, and so that's what's happening. We are having to hire like a whole bunch of new staff coming along, and this is not easy. Like, to have a pick, pack, and ship operation where you need 6 feet of distance between each other, and you need it's not. Wow. Let me paint a picture here. It's difficult. It's a difficult situation to be having, record volumes, having to ship with limited square footage, where you have to try and keep everyone's health in mind first and foremost, right? So it becomes very, very complex. On the physical side, the shortage is astute in the silver market. It is astute. There's not very much, and it's very hard. You can do your best to try and source silver, but most places are out, and if any have any, it's going to be a 2-month delay, this or that. And so how in the retail market are you going to turn around to someone and be like, I got silver for you in 60 days? So why don't you just give me the funds and don't call me for 60 days, and then I'll send you the tracking information. That's not going to work. Okay. Right. So we have to work our butt off to try and get supply closer to a delivery date that's amenable for our customer base and for our team and for just our brand in general. So it's a hairy situation. Someone's doing this 24/7. I talked to him last week, and we talked about the Royal Canadian Mint shutting down. And he's giving me insights into what he's dealing with day to day, and it sounds difficult. It sounds very difficult what he's up to. We're also getting a situation where people who maybe, we talked about it yesterday, who are maybe new to the market, maybe new to the bullion industry, and don't really understand how it operates.
Right.
From miner to refiner to mints to dealers, to dealer networks, and how many hands are involved in that way, and how many profit margins are made in order to run those businesses and pay employees with. And then when you don't have the product, how you must jack the price up to even, because you don't have the volume. Imagine if you have a tenth of the volume of inventory to sell to people. Well, you're going to have to raise the profit margin almost 10 times to even meet your normal profits that you use to keep the lights on, keep the employees paid. Oh, by the way, you have to hire more employees because you're getting unbelievable amounts of demand. So the whole thing is it's very complex. It's hard for me to eloquently describe it. I do my best, but it's pretty clunky. But but it's times like these. It's hard for people to understand, so it's easy for them to think that we're price gouging. Don't get it wrong. It's good business right now. It's some of the greatest business this company has ever had. So don't get me wrong. It's good. Our business is great at the moment. But it's not as if we're sitting there and jacking up prices because the market's not willing to pay it. We will put the price at what the market equilibrium is, essentially. So in order to understand what the market equilibrium is like this it's a mystical number that you try and find for a price for a good, where you can find the perfect amount of demand for the perfect amount of supply that you have. And you try and figure out the best number for yourself and your customer base and your market share, et cetera. And if you set the price too high, customers don't come and buy. And if you set the price too low, your inventory gets sold out. So you got to find that balance. And that's just the situation we're in the industry. And it's top to bottom, from miners who maybe are shutting down, to refiners who are shutting down, to mints that are shutting down, to retail bullion dealers who maybe, we don't know how bad this could get. I mean, at some point, it wouldn't surprise me to see retail bullion dealers not being able to do pick, pack, and ship if their staff starts getting sick. So, you have to start thinking in those terms.
Well, and you brought up, I'm glad that you mentioned the miners, because now we have a full picture of what the supply chain, what a broken supply chain looks like. Okay.
Yeah.
Right here from the refineries, they're closing down. That is a huge component of the supply chain. For the last decade, we all know, anybody that's been paying attention knows that the mining sector has been just decimated.
Yeah.
So we've got, not only do we have mines closing, we have mines running out of product. They can't dig out what's not there. There's been no R&D, no research and development for the past 10, maybe 12 years, 14 years. So there's nothing of size coming online. So, and now that directly rolls into what you just described as far as what you guys are dealing with at the retail level. So we have not just a broken supply chain, we don't have a supply chain. Oh, and by the way, all of the transportation that goes between the mine, the smelter, the refiner, and the retailer, all of that transportation is all gone because everybody's on lockdown or quarantine or sick. So everything is busted. So when they say that that things are going to be shut down for a week or 2 weeks, or I agree with what you said earlier, James. We're probably looking at, my guess is a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks where things are going to be really jacked up and and things aren't going to be smooth or easy or any of that. I mean,
it's what you describe as a dislocated market. It's extremely dislocated, and you talked about top to bottom, from the mining industry that's been starved for the last 10 years to the refining industry. Especially in the United States, we've had a lot of collapses in the refining industry.
Yep.
Northwest Territorial Mint, implosion. Elemental Mint, implosion. Republic Metals, implosion. Now, those three used to make a lot of bullion. They're gone, totally gone. So we have a situation where supplies is tough, and like you said, the logistics of it's getting complicated, and all the shutdowns. And so it's not an easy situation. And I feel for people who saw the spot go to 12 and were thinking, I'd love to buy some bullion, and they come in, it's $20, right? But I mean, it's tough. But hopefully you've got a position before that moment,
right?
Or hopefully you can, hopefully it'll come back to you, and get to a point where, you feel comfortable starting your position. But the point I'm trying to make is that the market is setting these prices. This is not one dealer is just not just simply saying, Silver Eagles are $24 and that's how it's going to work. No, there's thousands of dealers around here. It's not like we're on some, 4chan conspiracy website talking to one another saying we're going to set the price at 24. This is what the market's dictating. And
right.
It is a collection of what the demand and the supply is, and that's what the price can be set at. So you could look at eBay. I did another video about just the gold and silver ratio, and we talked about a little yesterday, but the gold silver ratio on the COMEX has been gyrating around 115 to like 127. I think it's intra month peaked, and that's just ridiculous. Like the idea that silver and gold at 127, it's like the only other time it's ever gotten that out of control was like the 1932 to 33 era, when like silver got down to 25 cents an ounce and you had gold, confiscated from 2067 to 35. So you had a situation, I think, for roughly a few weeks where 35 divided by 26 cents, I think, an ounce of silver. So you got 134 ratio, I think, for a week or two. And that's the Great Depression. So here we are. Comics is telling us essentially in a gold silver ratio context, we are in a Great Depression. And
Yes.
the truth of the matter is that it's not true. You go and look in the real world and you want to go buy the physical stuff and at 0.99 fine or 22 karat legal tender coin, and you start doing the work and the research, and it's not anywhere near 120 because of this issue, this dislocation in the system. The truth and the reality of the physical bullion market is saying, and I looked at the data on eBay because eBay would be the easiest in terms of getting the data in a place that is, the most transparent and fair. And I can understand the data because it's not being skewed and there's nobody with self-interest. I'm seeing the sold listings of what's being sold for silver eagles versus gold eagles. I use those two as the bellwether because they're the number one choices in the bullion industry for bullion buyers and sellers. And it's not just simply dealers that are on eBay. There's also individuals selling silver and gold. And so,
that's a really important key.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a totally important key because,
Yep.
The price is subjective to what the buyer is willing to pay.
Right.
So it's just like anything. It's like collectibles or anything else. And we're talking about bullion here. It's not like I got this magical bullion that should have some ridiculous premium because it's so collectible and no one else has it. I mean, there's 500 million silver eagles in the world.
There you go.
It's like they're not coming out, most of them, for $23 an ounce. You'll see them when it gets to around 50 or higher.
And you're talking about newer ones. You're talking about like 14, 15, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. If you start getting into the 1980, 86 to 89.
Those do get some premiums. Some of the smaller
they get bigger premiums. Much
sure.
bigger.
So the point of that is that rambling about eBay is simply that the ratio in the last few weeks has been running from like roughly 76, I think, to as high as 88. But that's a huge swath and huge difference between 115 to 127. So
Yes.
What I'm seeing here is the comics. And yesterday I tweeted out a chart, and it's the chart I use a lot of times to try and understand when silver is starting to get to a place where it starts to make sense to potentially sell some. Because I'm not going to hold my entire silver position for my entire life. There's a portion of it that I'm going to allocate to other things. And this chart is just, I looked at it yesterday. It just shows you that what we just went through in the silver market, especially, as the gold as well. But the silver market is just flat out obvious. You have, it was a complete Western rig job in terms of what we're still seeing in the silver spot price being roughly 14 or so. You see, the chart is kind of complex when you look at it, but the chart essentially takes the data for the silver market in the Eastern world and it aggregates it from 1970 to 2020. So it's 50 years of silver price aggregation. And it shows a top level line, which is just the Eastern silver price data aggregated. And then in the center, you get the spot price. And then on the bottom black line, you get the New York comics driven silver spot price or silver futures price. And from that data, you can flat out see the spot and the comics just both slant downward, and the Eastern price just goes straight upward. And I'm not kidding you. And then look, and the tweet, it just flat out shows you like India. I'm hearing words and rumors online from people I respect. David Jensen, he's done a really good job, talking about palladium and platinum market and silver market. And he has a contact in London who told him that the silver demand out of India is off the charts right now. And for anyone that doesn't understand, silver demand out of India is silver in India. They're the silver gorilla, more so than JP Morgan. People run their mouths about JP Morgan. Yeah, they could rig the price for, a decade or more because no one's going to put them in prison yet. But they're not going to be here a few decades from now doing the same stuff. But India damn well will be. They're going to continue buying silver forever. I mean, those people, they just keep buying silver because farmers can't afford gold, and so they buy silver. And they also aren't stupid. They look at the price of gold versus silver, and they're thinking, "Give me the silver." And so,
I got a 70 or 80 to 1 or 100 to 1.
120, which is what the Westerners tell me, right? But every year they deviate between anywhere like 150 million to 250 million ounces. It's been closer to 250 million lately. 250 million ounces a year alone in India silver demand. And now, remember, to put that in context, that's way more than JP Morgan has in their stupid comics warehouse. I mean, the whole COMEX silver entire pile is like 300 million ounces. So you're talking about, if India is probably on the cliff if this keeps up for roughly that in 1 year, they could literally be demanding the same amount of the entire silver that's sitting in the COMEX warehouse. So, I mean, it's a situation where this can't last for much longer. You're seeing the dislocation because the market is not real. The market is fake. It's phony. The prices you're seeing are phony. The question is, do you have the patience and the gut to stick it out and wait it out? I mean, that's really what we've been doing here for, I've known you for a decade almost now. You know, we've been in this for a long time. We've gotten gray hairs waiting for this to show up. But it is showing up right in our face. And now it's happening. And I think it's really starting. This is the second half of that 2008 timeout game that we saw with all the bailouts then. This is the second half of the bailouts now. And this ultimately is probably going to lead into the end game, where you're going to start seeing this currency truly devalue versus precious metals.
Is that so? I personally think that that's where we're at. We are at that paradigm shift that we've talked about for the past decade. I mean, it seems like the end goal of the Federal Reserve when it was founded in 1913. Their end goal was to steal, transfer all of the wealth of the nation to the hands of a few. And it seems like that's exactly where we're at in this $2 trillion package that they just signed off on, and the fact that that they're even mentioning the ESF, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, that is in the sole. Steve Mnuchin is the only person on planet Earth that has sole control over that fund, and the fact that they are mentioning that tells me that either A, it's over, or B, they're terrified. And I know they aren't terrified. These people aren't stupid. They're not scared. They're not panicking. They're not any of that. They know that the game is over, that the goal of the Federal Reserve, like I said, was to steal the wealth of the nation, and they have achieved that goal. That's what it seems like.
It is happening, right? I mean, they're going for the copper pipes. They're going for the kitchen sink. You thought that 2008, 9, 10, 11 was bad. Cash Carey is back. He's lying to your face on 60 Minutes like Ben Bernanke used to. I mean, Mnuchin used to foreclose on people in the 2008 financial crisis, and now he's the head of the ESF. I mean, these are the two criminals that are like next level now in your face. And I mean, I don't know these people. I don't even know what their motives are. I'm sure they rationalize whatever they're doing.
Right.
But I mean, it's just someone's going to do it. They're just acting essentially. I mean, and I'm sure they think it's cool and they have all this power and stuff. Yeah. But it's a trip when you look at the history of it and how it's coming back in our face. And yeah, dude, like they're going to torch this system, and they're going for the copper piping, the kitchen sink. None of the criminals in 2008, got in trouble. No one went to prison.
Right.
None of that has happened. So it's emboldened them. I mean, we don't have Bill Black as the AG of the United States of America. He's not there putting these people in prison.
Right.
This share buyback system that they've had, it's criminality right in your face, and it should not be allowed. But there they are doing it, and what we're seeing is a straight up shearing of the baby boomer class as they go into their retirement. They're just straight up getting their entire, whatever little median, they have left, median money they have left in their retirement account, just get sheared by the wolves on Wall Street.
Yep.
And if you're not repulsed by this, you probably don't. You're probably not paying attention, or you're probably telling yourself a kindergarten story. I mean, that you're probably listening to the kindergarten story that the financial media is telling you because it's in their best interest to tell you that.
That you should be buying. You should be buying right now.
No. It's probably gonna pop up a little bit longer, and then we're gonna see another meltdown coming up. The data coming out is abhorrent. I mean, the data, you saw it, GDP Q2, they're talking about a 0.25% knockoff in the GDP. I mean, 25% of the GDP. Think about it. You make 100 widgets first quarter. Next quarter you make 75. I mean, that is unheard of, like to have a knockoff at that large. The knock-on effects of that, we don't know them yet. They're coming. They're probably in months. And it's going to be one of those things where, hey, surprise, this thing failed. Hey, surprise, this thing failed. Hey, surprise, this thing's failed. That's what's probably coming. Dominoes are going to start falling.
Now, I want to ask you, and then probably should wrap it up, but I think that this will put a fine point on what you were just saying. I argued years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that the corporate stock buyback program was one of the worst things that could be happening to the stock market. And I was told that I was crazy. There were people that were saying, it's okay. They've been doing that forever. And I said, but you can't continue to eat your own and expect that to turn out well. And now that's exactly where we're at. So we've got there's only like 4 or 5, maybe we'll say 10 different companies that have been driving the stock market. And that's the FANGs and a couple others. So you've got that situation. Everybody else is rotten. Everybody else is corporate stock buyback. It's the only thing supporting the price per share. And now we have this situation where they're
Japanese.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we're going to Japanize our economy. Yeah.
So, but the question that I have, James, inside of this stimulus package is the Fed coin or a digital currency. The ZERP that was just unleashed, and on a Sunday, imagine the Fed making an announcement on a Sunday when the markets are dead.
That's what they have to do now, so they can watch the gold market explode on Sunday evening.
Okay, boys, everybody get ready.
Call up Benoit Gilson at the BIS desk and get to work.
Exactly. Fire up the market. Anyway, so they make the announcement that they're going to zero. They put in the stimulus package the digital currency.
Right.
So now, and they announced, President Trump came out, when they first started talking about the $1,200 checks going to everybody, that they were going to be deposited into your account.
Yeah. Okay. I get it.
You see,
$1,200 checks.
You see where I'm going?
Oh, totally.
The cashless society and the ZERP. You said the Japanification of our economy. Japan learned that when they introduced ZERP, I think you were saying this yesterday, that the number one selling item in Japan became home safes because people were unloading all of their cash and keeping it at home. They were making money.
Sure.
So they've got that. So now they've got it in. So they learned from that, and now they are twisting it to. Or am I seeing?
No. I think you're right. I think that's the next level that they want. Right. If every iteration of crisis brings on a further tightening and noose around the mass of humanity, well, this one's going to be no different. So what are they going to do?
Right.
They're going to get these people poorer and poorer and get them in a situation where they're desperately accept anything. And you get a situation where you can't work for months. You have bills piling up. A $500 expense is going to be a problem for like 50-75% of the population. Okay.
Right.
That's where we're getting to. And so, of course, here's the crisis and here's the solution. The solution is the e-dollar. Get it on your smartphone app. It's the e-dollar. It respects your privacy. It's safe and sound. And I mean, just look at Bitcoin. What a volatile shit show that is. I mean, You should stick with the e-dollar. And so the whole thing is we've been conditioned with the cryptocurrencies that it's okay and it's safe. Okay, that was great, and it helped because there was just a lot of fraud in that market. So it somehow gives the Federal Reserve like some sort of semblance of credibility when they're just as bad, except more polished. But really, like this is where we are, and so it's look. I understand that people are broke. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that are broke, and they are losing their jobs at a clip that is crazy. I mean, this month alone, there's going to be like 1.5 million to up to 4 million people are going to lose their job just in a week. I'm sorry, not in a month. So just think about that in a month's term. Like you may end up having 6 to 10 million people lose their job. I mean, it's way higher than anything that's ever been kept in data terms. It may be back to like 1930s type like size in terms of the ratio of population. So we are seriously staring at a 1929 style crash right in our face, and it's happening even faster at a faster clip. So
Right.
I am not saying that these people do not deserve some type of recompense for having the government tell them, you can't do business. Okay. Yeah. The government should just print the currency and hand it to them. But the problem is it's coming with these terrible, strings attached where it's going to be the situation of, we're not even going to worry about the banking industry that we've consolidated and in the last 10 years made even more criminal. No, we're just going to have the Federal Reserve. You're going to have your own account with them straight up.
Right.
And forget the fractional reserve lending thing. Now you can just get hooked on this situation. So essentially you're setting up a situation in the future where everyone's, literally, partially living off a welfare check is basically what you're setting up. I mean, that's essentially it. So, and that just builds in more control for the people who stole the copper wiring in the kitchen, right? The kitchen sink. So I don't know. I think I would like to see Main Street bailed out, but not with the strings attached that they're trying to do. And you'll start, obviously people have seen these $2 trillion platinum coin pitches and all these ideas of how this is going to be done. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense. They're just printing the currency out of thin air and they're going to hand it out. And, Main Street will probably get some crumbs, while the actual people who are, on the inside, they're going to be taking the things of value and just straight up larceny. It's going to be worse than 2008. It's happening in real time, and it's so big, it's so wide, it's so hard to even grasp. It's going to take years and years to try and fully uncover in terms of research. It was the same last time. 2008 happened. You didn't learn about the 29 trillion of extended full-on loans until a 2010, 2011 partial audit was done.
Right.
Okay. So sometime in 2025, we're probably going to all be aghast at what's going on.
And now the Federal Reserve has conveniently they're able to hide the minutes and the notes from their meetings and so forth for what? Yeah. 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So we
sure.
won't know anything about what's going on today for 5 years. Meantime, everybody's moved on.
The only thing you're going to know are the broad brushstrokes, but the fine details of the larceny will not be exposed. And even when they are done later, the question will be, are we going to have justice ever in this country? Or are we just, it's extremely sad because you have a situation where there's genocide in that country. I mean, you see 50 some odd thousand people dying from heroin every year, right?
Yep.
I mean, on a clip of like Vietnam War clip. And what, you think those numbers are going to spike more with all these people out of home, that are losing their jobs? I mean, it's a real bad situation. And I don't look. I'm an optimist in terms of the future of humanity. I do think that we can do better, but people have to start thinking and using some rational thought, and some critical thinking, and stop accepting these people, talking down to them and parakeeting what they say and accepting what's being told to you. It's the vast majority of the stuff told to you is just flat out not true.
It's just a lie. I mean, it's just let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not true. It's a lie. They're lying.
True.
And
it's the Federal Reserve. It's a freaking lie. Yeah.
Right. And well, and the thing is that they've condemned. And one of the things that I respect most about you, and I talked about this in our last interview, is the fact that you use the language that you use is not the language that we are told to use. In terms of, it's not a dollar because that's a lie. It's not money. That's a lie. It's a Federal Reserve fiat note, period. And it's a miniature contract that says that you, the person holding that contract, owe the Federal Reserve that money or that currency. You owe them interest on that. It's a contract if you look at it. And it just,
look, when it comes to weights and measures,
when it
weights and measures and honesty or very important things, you better be very explicit about the terms you use, right?
Yes.
If I went to a doctor and he started telling me some general things like, yeah, I'm just going to stick a pill in you and the what's nots will be okay, no problem. Like I would be really worried. Okay. Now, like if I seriously, I mean, like speaking gibberish like that, it doesn't make sense. Let's define what we're talking about.
Right.
And especially let's define what we're talking about. When I'm talking about a third of your life you spend chasing for it.
Right.
You might want to be explicit about the terms you use, and you might want to actually investigate what's going on instead of looking. I mean, I think most people, they get kind of overwhelmed in the front. It's like math class. When you don't like math class as a child, you get a bad feeling, and then every time you go to math class, it's like you just kind of turn off your ears. We got to break that cycle. You know, you got to little by little, and as soon as you get some confidence and some abilities, and you're like, oh, this is just another language. I can learn this. It's no problem. It's the same with the financial industry. So I know that people, when they first walk into the precious metals industry, they think we're talking another language. But one thing I love about the precious metal industry is that it requires you to learn a lot of things. It requires you to learn essentially top down to bottom, the entire financial industry, and also requires you to learn history and human psychology. I mean, just a huge amount, and political situations. I mean, you have to be, basically a Rembrandt, not a Rembrandt, but you got to be at least paying attention to a lot of things.
But one of the most important things that it's taught me, and that will teach most people, is that my wealth is my responsibility. And that what a lot of people have done for the past 30 or 40 years is through their employer, they've turned over a big piece of their wealth to somebody else. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I want to bounce this off of you, James, and we really got to get out of here. Imagine you have your home safe, and you have $100,000 in it, and you have said to yourself, I'm going to put $150 a month in there every month. And now you take that safe that has $100,000 in it, and you're constantly feeding it, and you take it down to the park at right down the road from your house. You take it down to the park, and we'll call that one of the major 401k companies that handles it, Charles Schwab or State Street, JP Morgan, whatever. Put whatever label you want on it, but you're at the park, and you set the safe down. And here comes Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and they're walking by. And you reach out to them and you say, hey, would you mind taking care of overseeing my safe? And I'm going to check back in with you in a couple of years. And in the meantime, I'm going to feed it $150 a month, every month, religiously. And I want you to take care of it for me. I'll check in with you about every 2 years, every 3 years, maybe every 6 months, but I'm not going to get involved with it. I just want you to take care of it. And that's kind of the picture that I've developed about how a lot of people handle their 401k. Is that it? Would you agree with that picture?
I would agree, not just simply on like just a middle class person who's working for a corporation who's not paying much attention to the savings in their 401k, all the way up to the highest net worth hand-me-down money given to the second, third, fourth generation, who then gives it to a family office, and the family office is doing derelict things with it. I mean, this goes from top to bottom, and people just, oh, I don't like it, hand it off. And it's like, no, you're going to get hurt that way. If you do that in life, you let other people make decisions, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a real problem for your future.
And that's what precious metals teaches you, is that I don't want my vault down at the park under the control of Nancy and Chuck. Right. Because that's what it is.
It's true. It's true.
That is a
Nancy picture. And Chuck and the Wall Street Wolves. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And it's like, wait a minute, this is it's not really
it's not in my best
idea.
interest. You got it.
So, well, James, it's such a pleasure speaking with you, and I love digging into what's going on. And I agree. I try to look at the sunny side of the street and try to be optimistic. There's a lot of things that are going on right now that are creating a lot of fear in people, and hopefully we've been able to smooth out some of the rough edges here and just give people an idea of what's actually happening so that some of that fear can be subsided, because with bad information there's more fear, with good information there's less fear. So that's the whole goal of this conversation. So I really appreciate you and the work that you do over at SD Bullion. Go see James and check out his work at sdbullion.com. I do republish a lot of his work. Having really respect what he's doing. I think he's doing an incredible job. And James, thank you for all your time today.
Rory, yeah, it's always a pleasure. And just the listeners out there, I know we did focus a lot on the negative here, but you got to remember we're about set for one of the craziest precious metal manias of all time that's coming up, and it probably bleed into a commodity melt up as well. You can't have commodity values as cheap as they've been for so long. So looking out later to the end of the 2020s into 2030s, real things are going to start revaluing much higher. So make sure you own precious real things and businesses that work in, that aren't reliant on debt, but cash flow. So think in those terms of serving others, and you'll do just fine. So I really do appreciate being on the show, Rory.
Thank you. And we'll pick it up in hopefully in another couple months. Hopefully there won't be a need for any emergency calls or anything, but
there may be.
then if there is, then we'll jump on. So all right.
Sounds great, Rory.
All right, buddy. Have a good afternoon.
You too.